Welcome back to the Southern Citizen Podcast. I'm your host, Hope Newsom-Staples. On the show, we spend time talking to those I love to call Southern citizens. To be a Southern citizen in my book, you need only meet two requirements. Number one, you have to claim the American South as your homeland. And number two, you must be 75 years or older. During each episode, we sit down with these Southern citizens and listen in as they share about their lived experience. Today's episode is part 2 of my conversation with Kay and Shirley. So if you'd like a little better context surrounding the subjects of dyslexia therapy and Mississippi College, you might want to back up and listen to episode 5. When I'm not chatting it up with old folks for the podcast or homeschooling my children, you can find me teaching at my alma mater, Mississippi College, or as the locals call it, MC. MC is a private Christian university that serves right around 5,000 students. For the last few years, I've been an adjunct faculty member at MC in the Dyslexia Therapy Master's Program. Unbeknownst to most folks, dyslexia is the most common of all learning disabilities, and a rich history and heritage exists surrounding dyslexia research and the field of dyslexia therapy. We at MC want to share this knowledge and highlight how Mississippi College is woven into this story. As always, I will be facilitating the conversation. You will also hear from Kay Peterson, our fearless leader, along with commentary from our beloved academic coordinator, Shirley Tipton, who I hope is somewhere right now on a sandy white beach enjoying her retirement. If you would like to learn more about Mississippi College and the Masters of Education in Dyslexia Therapy program that we offer, please visit www.mc.edu to learn more about dyslexia therapy. All right, ladies. We're here for episode 2, right, of our Mississippi College Dyslexia Therapy program.
Right.
History and other things. So my name is Hope Staples, and I'm an adjunct instructor here at MC, and maybe we can just reintroduce ourselves to make sure we know whose voice belongs to who.
So I'm Kay Peterson. I'm the program director and adjunct faculty at Mississippi College. Okay.
And I'm Shirley Tipton. I'm the former academic coordinator for the Dyslexia Therapy Program. I retired in February the 1st, and I love retirement.
We had to bring you out of retirement, Shirley.
That's right. Anything for the program.
That's right. We appreciate you doing this for us,
Sure.
especially on a Saturday morning.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You could be doing lots of other things as a retired woman.
I have all week long to do that.
Your calendar's wide open, right?
That's right.
All right, so after our first discussion, Kay was saying that we felt like that was sort of an overview of our program and some of the history of dyslexia and how we got to where we are today. But we walked away from the interview thinking there were some other things that we should have asked. And so I've got kind of a list that we're just going to walk through. And so, Shirley, we wanted to kind of pick your brain a little bit more.
Oh, dear.
You're sort of the architect of this whole program. But Kay was sharing with me that once the program, I guess, was approved, you were able to help develop the syllabi for our courses. So could you speak to that a little bit about that process?
Sure. This was a journey that I didn't ever expect to have. I came to be the secretary for the Dean of the School of Education, Dr. Locke, and shortly after I got here in October of 2003, I did that the last time, messed up. 2003, he said, we are starting a new program and I'd like for you to run it. And I thought, oh joy,
Within
how
the
do
same
I do
year?
that? It was the next calendar year, like it started in 2004.
Okay.
So I said, okay, and I learned many, many things, one of which was how to do a syllabus. So Kay and Barbara presented the material that we would be having and helped to make the divisions for each one of the courses. Dr. Locke gave me an example of what the template was, and I constructed the syllabus for it. And it was much less complicated then than it is now, because we have a ever-changing way of doing syllabi. In fact, for my last 6 months, I changed the syllabi several times to add more things into it. But at the time that I set it up, it was pretty straightforward and pretty easy.
Because how many courses technically would be?
We have 4 internship courses and 4 what I call core courses that are taught in the summertime. So there are 8 altogether, and then if the students need an additional hour because they have financial aid requirements, then they have independent study courses that they can take for that 1 hour. And Kay developed those courses, and then I wrote the syllabus to go along with it.
And you sort of facilitated those
yes,
courses for financial aid?
Yes, I was the one that graded everything.
Okay.
So Dr. Locke asked me to develop several 1-hour courses and then
Right.
several 3-hour courses. And so we have about 6 or 8 of those that I put together, and I chose information that would be ancillary to what they were learning. So, for example, we Multisensory Teaching of Basic Language Skills textbook has an accompanying workbook that we don't order for our students, but it's one of the 1-hour courses. So they do the first half of the workbook first semester and the second half of the workbook second semester. So we tried to think of things that would be beneficial to them, that would go along with what we were doing.
So in the midst of you creating the syllabi for the course, I also know that materials had to be ordered and selected. So what was that process?
Oh, that was huge. Because I think my last count, we had 9 separate notebooks that we use, and the related information and the curriculum guide are huge, and so they all had to be not mimeographed these days, copied and assembled. And so ordering all that we needed to do that process is enormous.
Barbara and I had been doing that with the courses that we were teaching in Dallas, and so we were able to give Shirley a list of materials that we would need and the resources that we wanted ordered, but then she was the one that actually ordered everything and put it all together.
And the timeline was really tight, right?
Yes, it is.
It was very tight.
To try to get everything in.
And my hands touched every single piece of training material for 20 years. So someone else can do that now.
That's right. Did you always use those paper ream boxes?
Oh, yes.
That was kind of always how you organized things for the students?
For the beginning students, they come in and they have their names on the side of the box, and we use that like a place card for them until everybody understands. I think this was Kay's idea, and it was a great one, so that they could visually see the person sitting above the box.
So it kind of had a multi-purpose.
Yes.
It kept their materials organized, and then it helped the instructors figure out who
We would tell them
everyone
it was their personal file box. But then, yes, we would turn it so that we could see their name.
Smart.
And then we made seating charts, trying to...
Don't they say work smarter, not
They do.
harder?
They
Right.
do.
And as we started out, we started with 1 cohort, of course, and then it became 2 cohorts, and then it has morphed into 6 cohorts operating all the time.
When the program was first established and you began to recruit, who was your very first student, and how did that person, was it email or phone call?
It was a little of everything. We had for a long time people that were interested in dyslexia therapy. So we had 13 people to start in our first cohort. One of them was Robin Lamonis, who had been working in this for years and years, but she had never had a master's degree in it. And later on she said that this was as hard for her as anything she had ever done. But she was so grateful to be through with it, and have that knowledge behind her.
So we really had folks just waiting.
Yes, we absolutely did, and it was mainly word of mouth, and honest to goodness, it's still word of mouth is our best advertisement. People see what their coworkers are doing, and they desire to do the same thing.
Okay, I have a name, Janine Phillips. I know
Yes.
you wanted to mention her and her influence.
So for several summers, I was training for another colleague in Dallas. And Janine Phillips had come to Dallas for training because her son had been identified with dyslexia, and she wanted something that she could do to help him. So for 2 years, she traveled to Dallas, and Barbara Fox was her instructor her first year, and I was her instructor her second year. And then when she went back to Wichita, Kansas, she decided that she wanted to set up a training center for teachers there. And so for several summers, I traveled to Wichita to do the instruction while she was working on her training to become an instructor. And when Dr. Locke gave me the call in the spring, could I begin in July, although I had been teaching for other course directors for several years, I had not written my own curriculum. So Janine very graciously offered me a contractual situation for me to use the curriculum that she had written while I was traveling to Wichita to help her get her training center set up. So we owe a huge debt of thanks to Janine Phillips in Wichita, Kansas for her part in helping us get started at Mississippi College.
I think that speaks to the spirit of dyslexia therapy and the program.
Mm-hmm.
People just want to help each other because
They
we
do.
want to help children.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad we're adding that in.
Mm-hmm.
We also wanted to talk about how some of our other instructors came into the program. So you and Barbara came 1st.
Mm-hmm. So Mitty Bilbo,
Uh-huh.
a resident of Mississippi, was the first instructor that we taught, and she began in the summer of 2004. She had been using the videotape series at her school and wanted to be doing what Miss Biddle was doing on the videotapes. So she was our very first one that we trained to become an instructor. It's a 3-year internship. So after someone graduates from the course, our accreditation requirements are that they teach in the field for 3 years. And then at Mississippi College, we have designed a 3-year internship, and it's at the invitation of the course director. So then from Mitty, we went to Terry Broom, who was in cohort 1, and then Mary Lou Johnson, who was in cohort 2.
Did those two ladies ever teach here at MC, or did they start
No,
at Blue Mountain?
they were in Blue Mountain. So once the congressional
Definitely directed grant.
thank you, was approved at Blue Mountain, and we had worked out being able to use their facilities for training. They had, according to Dr. Locke, there had been a collegial partnership, if you will, or agreement between respect, trust situation between Blue Mountain College and Mississippi College. So they were familiar with our school and we with them. So Mary Lou, the first instructors for Blue Mountain were Barbara Fox and Kay Peterson.
Right.
And it was concurrent with the class that was going on in Clinton. So I would teach in Clinton and Barbara would teach in Blue Mountain for a week, and then we would swap.
Tag team.
And so Mitty was helping, I think, in Blue Mountain. So we had someone teaching with us in Blue Mountain, but we were teaching by ourselves those weeks in Clinton.
Wow. So Terry and Mary Lou were able to come in and take over the responsibility of Blue Mountain.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's closer to their homes, so
Right, okay,
it
yeah.
makes sense that they would do that.
Our goal from the very beginning was sustainability. And because this course is taught so differently than other college courses, it's not 1 hour 2 times a week. It is 8 hours a day for 5 consecutive days one week and 5 consecutive days the second week. You really need 2 people.
Yeah.
And life happens. I mean, we've all along the way, we've had people that, for example, the week that I was teaching in Blue Mountain and Mitty was there with me, her husband had a very serious health issue and she needed to go and be with him. And so that just, happens with all of us.
Yeah.
So that's why it's so important to have more than one person.
So after Mary Lou and Terry, then I believe would Kristen?
I think Kristen would be next.
Okay, so Kristen Frierson, and I have a note that she was cohort 9, and that was here on the Clinton campus,
Yes.
where she did her training.
Yes.
Cohort 7?
I'm sorry, 7.
Yeah, in 2010. Yes, and she was here on campus.
I reviewed my Roman numerals earlier today, but I had to
Yes,
think
so
about
Kristen was
that.
next.
Cohort 7, okay.
And then in 2013, Hope Staples was in cohort 11.
You know her, don't you?
Some days.
And so after she had worked the required years in the field, then she began her instructor training with us. And that was so that Kristen would have another instructor with her in Hattiesburg and then eventually Summerall.
That's right.
But you also have come and helped when we needed for you to in Clinton.
I think I came in at a time where several of our instructors were having just different issues in their families,
Yes.
health issues, and so I've been able to kind of float in and out, and that's been really special. And you guys have been gracious because I think I've experienced 2 pregnancies in the midst of that. So we've all grown a lot in those few years.
Right.
And then what about Holly? When did she? I have her as cohort 9 when Holly came.
Yes,
through.
she was in the first cohort at Blue Mountain.
Okay.
So after she had finished her requisite years in the field, then I initially had invited her for instructor training to help with Blue Mountain. But she lives kind of halfway between Blue Mountain and Clinton. And so then she decided to help out with classes in Clinton rather than going to Blue Mountain.
And then I have Paige as our next edition.
Yes.
Okay.
So Paige Norwood was in cohort 12 in 2013. Interestingly, you were in cohort 2013. Paige was in 2013, and Celeste Spires was in 2013. Celeste Spires is a current faculty member with us. She was in cohort 11 with you in 2013. She is also an instructor with me in Dallas at a training center there, but wanted to get a master's degree and knew that I was traveling to Mississippi, and so I encouraged her to come to Mississippi. So she was already an instructor, but she did not have a master's degree until she came through the course at Mississippi.
And she helps teach here at the
Yes,
Clinton campus.
she does teach at the Clinton campus.
And then Paige joined in with Mary Lou and Terry.
Yes.
At
So
Blue
she
Mountain.
went through her instructor of therapy training with Mary Lou and Terry at Blue Mountain. And they are about to finish up Crystal Strickland as an instructor of therapy at Blue Mountain.
And she will take the place of Terry, who retired.
So we've had some movement in the last few years, just life changes. So the next thing I have on my to-do list for us was to talk about our first textbook, Structures and Techniques. I don't think I've ever even heard of that. So maybe you can share with us what that is.
Well, we have some in our library, so I can show you one. So Structures and Techniques was the first name for the textbook that we use now, Foundations for Literacy. And that when the education pendulum swung, which it does occasionally, and the word literacy became the buzzword of education for language arts, reading, writing, and spelling, then they changed the title to Structures and Techniques, which came from the work of Orton and Gillingham, to Foundations for Literacy.
Okay, so it's the same content.
It's the same there are a few additions in Foundations for Literacy from Structures and Techniques, but if you turn the pages, it's primarily the same content, but a different title, course title.
I was just thinking about this too with our Foundations textbook. Are there any other programs that you know of that use that as a textbook?
Janine uses it in Wichita, Kansas. I think the Shelton School uses it for some of their courses that they teach. That's kind of another historical question, Hope, because after alphabetic phonics was developed at Scottish Rite Hospital in the 60s, and it was officially named alphabetic phonics, there were eventually about 12 or 13 courses that only used that Structures and Techniques textbook to teach alphabetic phonics, and they were all at the therapy level.
Foundations really does accompany alphabetic phonics.
Yes,
Okay.
or any alphabetic phonics-based course. Many courses have also added the multisensory teaching of basic language skills that's been edited by Judith Bursch, with chapters written by people that are prominent in our field.
Yeah.
So I don't know how many actually still use Foundations for Literacy, but because it ties so closely, particularly to our procedures, we have continued to use it at Mississippi College. Well, and the other thing that the MTBLS textbook does is it has the current research that backs up the procedures that are in Foundations for Literacy.
Yes.
So it shows you that it's still relevant, just like we talked about in our first podcast. Our 8-part linkage goes all the way back to the 30s and 40s. So the book that Judith Bursch continues to edit just provides more current research for what we do and why.
The other thing I wanted to ask about was, so far we believe we have had cohort members from approximately 14 states.
I think there are a
Shirley?
few more than that, but I would have to count it up. At least 14,
Yeah.
and probably more than that.
Kay, can you talk about some of our mother-daughter combos
I
that we've
can.
had come through the program?
Yeah, so that's been very interesting. So Mary Lou Johnson, who was in cohort 2, was in instructor training while her daughter Mindy was enrolled in the Master of Education in Dyslexia Therapy. So they were one mother-daughter team. Jan Hankins, who is the director of the Mississippi College Education and Evaluation Center, daughter, was actually in her same cohort.
They trained together.
At the same, they sat next to one another
Yes.
on the back row.
I did not know that.
Yes.
And then our third mother-daughter duo were Rachel Ward and her mom, Becky Hightower, from Carolina. And they were actually in training together at the same time. So they traveled from Carolina to Mississippi for their training. And Becky and Rachel, have established a training course. And they are now MSLIC accredited and have trained about 3 different groups of teachers.
Wow, I did not know that. That's awesome.
And the last time I talked to Rachel, Shirley, she was telling me that she has had a private school contact her about training all of their teachers.
Isn't that
That's
wonderful?
amazing.
That's so good.
That's amazing.
And Mindy Walker, who has moved several times because her husband's in the service, is like a missionary for dyslexia. She's established all kinds of programs all over the United States, Texas, and where, Georgia?
Yeah, because they're moving.
That's right.
Ever so often.
I think they've put down roots now.
Okay, yeah. So, Shirley, did you have any other thoughts that came to mind as far as establishing the program?
The only thought that I have that I want to share is that this truly is a work of God, because when I came here, I had a little bit of background in Learning Disabilities Association. I worked for rehab services and had done some work with a project with them. So it was like I was being groomed for this. I had an interest in it. I had a love for it. I had no idea when I came to be the secretary for the dean as my retirement job, the first of many retirement jobs, that I would be in this. But I was placed here when I was needed. And while I don't teach and I don't do things that all the instructors and the director do, they needed somebody that could organize all of the record keeping and all of the training material production and all the things that needed to be done. So I feel like I was placed here and others were placed in the same way. So it's really been a miracle happening. It was hard for me to leave, but at age 74, it was time to let someone younger than I and probably more skilled, particularly in technology, take over. So it has truly been a blessing to me, and the people that I have met have been absolutely wonderful, and it's been a joy of my life.
Yeah.
The other important part about that is that Barbara and I live in Dallas, Texas. And so we very fortunately could arrive. Shirley had everything organized, everything printed, everything ready, and we step in and do the instructing. But traveling from a different state, we absolutely needed somebody that was here on campus, and Shirley is so organized that she had everything ready for us.
Most of the time.
And we could just come in and do what we do, which is the instruction part. And then we kept up with the practicum part with the cohort members. But when Barbara and I were teaching together in Dallas, we were the ones pushing the shopping cart down the aisles of the Office Depot, buying the binders and the dividers and and we made all the copies for all of the curriculum guides. And so we knew what amount of work that was, because that's what we had been doing ourselves in both Dallas, and then she and I taught some courses together in Arkansas.
Yeah. Well, Shirley, talking about your retirement, I know you're not too far removed, but have you kind of been able to sit back and maybe have a takeaway from this experience?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
I'm sure it's coming. I'm in the process of trying to pack and get ready to move to Florida to a retirement center there. So that's taken up most of my time. I look forward to the time when I can sit and just think.
When you get on the beach.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yes. Won't that be wonderful?
that's right. You can have time to reflect, right?
Yeah.
Or she's sitting in her resort library.
Yeah, by the fireplace.
Oh,
Right.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
Text
That'd be
us.
wonderful.
Let us know.
It's coming. The reflection time is coming.
I think that's so true, and I kind of have that tendency when I'm in the midst of something. You kind of have to just face what's in front of you at the moment,
Right.
And then after it's said and done, then you can sit back and sort of look at the pieces that, and sometimes you can kind of see how God is putting those pieces together, and you couldn't have orchestrated it on your own.
No,
So,
absolutely not.
We could not have gotten here on our own. I mean, as we said in our first podcast, it really is a gift from our Heavenly Father and a ministry for Him that we hold very dear to our hearts. I have one more question for Shirley.
Yeah.
Maybe more than that.
Okay.
So, kind of remind us how we got to Hattiesburg, which has since moved to Summerall.
Okay, because we had such a success in North Mississippi at Blue Mountain Christian University, as it's called now, we decided that there are students that are on the Gulf Coast and in the southern part of Mississippi that would like to have something that was closer to them for their training rather than coming to Clinton. So we started that just as sort of like a pilot in Hattiesburg, and I think we had, I can't remember if it was 5 or 7 students there, so it was small in getting started. It's still building, but we do that group a little bit differently, that cohort a little differently, because we have them completely finish the 2-year program before we start another program. So it's not churning all the time like the other programs are. But it's building, and I think that the more people down there that are trained and find out that it's closer to their home, the better it will be.
I agree. I think it's definitely meeting a need
I do too.
for that part of the state.
Well, and even Louisiana, I think.
Yeah, the
Yes.
region.
Just in the more southern part, I think there are going to be others that come to that location.
Since I've been able to help Kristen there, we are so thankful for Benedict Day School
Yes.
and the fabulous facility that they allow us to use there.
That's
It's been
right.
a blessing to us and for our cohort members too. So
It's not an enormous amount of money, but we are paying for the use of the classrooms and the materials and equipment and everything that's there. So
yes.
Blue Mountain and
Blue Mountain
and
and
Summerall.
Summerall, that's correct.
The other question that I was thinking of for Shirley was, before your retirement, I know that you had phone calls every day from
Oh, yes.
parents and or individuals looking for the training, but I think especially it would be good for our listeners to hear the kinds of conversations that you have with parents who've been searching for something or someone.
We get referrals from a lot of different groups. We have a lot of the doctor's offices or evaluation places in Mississippi that say when your child does have dyslexia, you need to contact Mississippi College, and here's the number. And so we get 2 or 3 of those every single week. And we also just get referrals from other parents who have had their children evaluated here, or they have gotten a therapist through us. And I have always kept a county by county list of the dyslexia therapists that are in the area. So when a parent or a grandparent or an aunt or somebody calls, we can send them the county listing for dyslexia therapists with phone number and where they live and their address and their email address and that sort of thing. Not their mailing address, but their email address.
Well, and I can attest to that. Countless times I've received emails from parents that said, Shirley gave me a list and your name was on it. Can you help me?
And we also asked them to give us the surrounding counties that might work for them, because sometimes, especially in some areas of the state, there are very few dyslexia therapists. It was really my goal to have at least one dyslexia therapist in every single county of Mississippi, and we're almost there, but not quite.
What do we have, 82? 82 counties?
82 counties, yes.
Okay.
And there are a few. I mean, most of them have therapists in surrounding counties, even the ones, that don't have anybody there.
Yeah.
But it's constantly changing, which is a challenge sometimes, too, to keep those lists up to date, because therapists don't always tell me when they have moved and where. I wish they would. I told them to tell their mama and then tell me when they've moved, but they don't always do it. But that's been really helpful to the parents that call in. And usually they are pretty desperate by the time they get to us. And I do a lot of on-phone counseling because some of them are brand new to this whole process, and they're afraid, and they want the best for their child, and they just need somebody to let them know that it's going to be okay.
I 100% agree with that. And anytime I've received those phone calls or those emails, I know myself and a lot of other dyslexia therapists that I try to stay in contact with, even if I can't help that family, I try to always say, try this person, or call this number. And because my friends and I discuss this, I mean, I truly believe we have a wonderful network of dyslexia therapists and really strong friendships among cohorts. And so I think as a consensus, we always try to leave that parent with something to help them.
A little bit of hope.
Yeah, like even if I can't be that person, maybe this next phone call or this next email might lead to what they need.
That's right. It's sad to me that there are some places where they may call everybody on the list and not find anybody that can provide therapy for their child. Yeah. But that does happen. So we are continuing to build, and we will keep that up.
Hope, I just thought of something. I think we might have talked about it in our first podcast, but I wanted to make sure that we mentioned that Mitty Bilbo was the first director of the Mississippi College Education and Evaluation Center.
And she went to great lengths to do that.
She went to great lengths to do that. Yes, she did. So we just want to make sure that we thank her for those years that she traveled back and forth from home and got it all started.
I also want to mention that my office had become a job opportunities place, because whenever a school system or a private center of some kind needed a dyslexia therapist, they would send me a request. They said, just send me some names, but it was easier and better, I think, to send out email blasts to everybody that had either graduated or were in the program, if they were willing to take somebody that was still in training, and have them contact the person that had the job. So very frequently I sent out things like that.
I've always loved getting your job opportunity emails. Like, even though I couldn't take them, I was like, well, let's see what's happening in the state or what's available.
Right.
Okay, I just thought of something. So we were the first dyslexia therapy master's program in the state of Mississippi. After you guys had developed it and implemented it, have other programs reached out to you guys to say, can you help us, or can you advise us on how to start this?
They have. For several years at the International Dyslexia Association conference that's usually held in the fall, I was invited to speak on a panel with Dr. Mary Farrell, that I think we mentioned in our first podcast, from Fairleigh Dickinson, and Dr. Karen Vickery from Southern Methodist University, and with Dr. Maureen Martin from the University of Southern Mississippi with the DeBard School of Language and Learning Disorders. And our panel presentation was on how to develop a program for dyslexia therapy. So we all had a program of some kind. Some were at what would be considered the teaching level, some were at the therapy level, and we each kind of had our own story about how we got to a particular campus. And after each of those sessions, we would have individuals from other colleges and universities come and talk to us about, how did you get there? What does your course look like? How many course hours? What's the practicum? So I don't know how many specifically have designed a whole master's degree around it, but there's quite a list on our, MSIC is our accrediting organization specifically for us. And on that website, there is a list of all the colleges and universities that have at least what they would call a certificate program, which would be 9 or 12 hours in their particular curriculum that is a part of their master's degree.
I think in our first podcast, you walked us through some of the historical facts as far as dyslexia and the research, and Dr. Orton, and he was active in the
1920s and 30s.
Anna Gillingham worked with him, and there's kind of a dyslexia family tree. Can you trace back to where you've had colleagues that were trained by others that had a direct connection to Dr. Orton? Okay, can you tell me about that?
Well, Barbara Fox was trained by Ailett Cox.
Okay.
Ailett Cox was trained by someone who was trained by Sally Childs. That person was trained by Anna Gillingham, and Anna Gillingham worked with Dr. Orton.
So really not that far removed.
We're about 5 steps removed from Dr. Orton.
And Ailett Cox is the author of...
She's the main author of our textbook.
Okay.
First, Structures and Techniques, and now Foundations for Literacy.
Okay.
She unfortunately passed away several years ago.
Did you meet her?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I did.
All
Went to
right.
some of her lectures.
All right.
She came to some of mine.
We're about 5 folks removed from Dr. Orton, right? I think he would be proud of y'all, huh?
I think so, too.
I texted a few dyslexia therapists from the program and asked them if they had any questions for you, and only one's gotten back to me so far.
Okay.
I think they must be all in therapy right now. But the question was really kind of a 2 or 3 part question, but when did you decide to pursue dyslexia therapy? And was there a pivotal moment, or was there a student that sort of inspired you to step into this field?
Well, I had been very fortunate to be at home with my children when they were in elementary school. And my husband and I were directors of a Sunday school department at our church. And every year we would have, it was 5th graders, and every year we would have 5th graders who came and were not proficient in reading and writing and spelling. So that was kind of my first introduction to that. And so once my children were older, upper elementary, junior high school, a friend down the street called and said, I've heard about this class called Alphabetic Phonics, and I think that you and I would really enjoy taking the class. So Ailett Cox was giving sessions on introducing people to what the course looked like and how long it took and all the procedures. So we went to her introduction session. And the dates that she was teaching did not fit our calendar that summer. So my neighbor down the street and I, and we still are in contact with each other monthly, just about, we went to the Shelton School in Dallas for our training. So that was 1987.
And the rest is history.
The rest is history.
I'd say you've been at it ever since.
Oh,
right?
wow. I was just going to do a little part-time something, maybe half a day while my children were in school.
You just never know, right?
You just never know.
That's kind of like a retirement job at Mississippi College that it will be a secretarial job and, a wonderful close to home thing, and then it morphed as well.
That's what I've been learning. If you just keep saying yes to the things that God puts in front of you, then
He gives you the strength to do it. Because growing up, I didn't ever want to say a prayer in Sunday school class. I never wanted to read anything in front of anybody else, and here we are.
And 1987 was the year that I got my undergraduate degree from Mississippi College after 20 years of being out of school. So,
Wow.
Isn't that funny?
We both started an adventure together.
In 87,
Yes,
and
we
never
did.
even knew it.
No,
Because
never.
I would be working here
Did
if
y'all
I
know
didn't have
that
a degree.
up until this
I
point?
We just found
this
that
very
out.
moment.
Yeah.
And that summer when I was in training, so my training was 3 weeks each summer. And because my husband and I were directors of a Sunday school class, our children went to a summer camp. And we went to the summer camp to help. So I was at Shelton during the day from 8 to 4 for class. And then I would drive an hour to the summer camp and go to all the, church services at the night and spend the night in a cabin with 5th grade girls.
Wow.
And then I would get up the next morning at 6 and drive back into Dallas to the Shelton School for training.
Wow. The Lord really did sustain you.
He really did sustain me.
That is, and what were you receiving your undergrad degree in at that time, Shirley?
I was working full-time for the state of Mississippi for vocational rehab for the blind, and so they had a program that people that were state employees could go to school and get their undergraduate degree, and it was called General Studies with emphasis in data processing. Now, does that not date me?
I love that degree.
Don't you love it?
Such an 80s degree.
Yes, and I was really proud to get it because I was out of school for a good long while.
Mm-hmm. So you graduated from MC in 1987, and then you never
the
imagined.
rest is history.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever think about throwing in the towel while you were here?
There were moments, but usually not dealing with dyslexia.
Mm-hmm.
It was usually the peripheral things.
Yeah.
But I stuck it out.
This kind of just came to mind, even in the midst of different trends, or I'm not quite sure the word, that have come and gone in the world of education. Do you feel like the dyslexia therapy program has sort of been...
I think it's maintained its own. I think one of the things that is a positive, I think, for almost all of the courses that I'm aware of is that we have respected and maintained the skeleton, if you will, of what we teach. But we've been very thoughtful about keeping abreast of current research and making sure that we've added that into our course. For example, when alphabetic phonics was written over that 10-year period at Scottish Rite Hospital in Dallas, they had what they called auditory practice activities that are in our situation learning teachers guides, because that predated all the research on phonological awareness. But once Barbara and I began working together and going to IDA conferences and hearing about phonological awareness, then we added that to all of the courses that we taught, as well as more specific structured reading comprehension and more structured written composition. So I think as we move along, now morphology is a word that's being talked about more, and we teach morphemes from Schedule 1 with suffix S. We just don't call it morphology, but we're actually teaching those from the very beginning.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to maintain and respect what works from the past, but be cognizant of what current research is telling us, if it's appropriate research, peer-reviewed, and all of those things that need to go into it.
And I'd like to add that I can attest to the fact that we make changes along the way. You know, things are not, we are not using the same, we're using the same core information as we had in 2004, but every year some things are modified and some things are changed and updated. So that goes on all the time.
So it's a fluid process, not static.
Right.
Correct.
The other thing that I wanted to add was that due to a family health situation, Barbara Fox needed to retire several years ago, and we miss her every day.
Yes,
And
we
that's
did.
the reason Celeste Spires began traveling with me from Dallas, was so that we had a second instructor of therapy for that course.
I can't remember if we talked about this in the last discussion, but the need for offering the What's Next program.
When we saw graduates at different conferences, either the MC conference here or I would see them at the IDA conference in the fall, they would say, when are we going to have a reunion? So one year we tried having a reunion. We really enjoyed seeing everybody. But then people began asking us about, what have you added? What's new? What do I do with somebody that I've finished the course but they still need more work? How do we do those lesson plans? So that's really how the What's Next sessions began. And so far we've offered 3.
Okay. And the response has been tremendous.
It has
from
been.
that. I also think that speaks to the importance of the conference that we have here at MC and how important it is to attend that, to kind of maintain that camaraderie with cohort members. It's like a reunion.
It's like a great big family reunion, but you learn too.
I don't know what I'm going to do this year, Miss Shirley, when I get off that elevator and turn the corner and you're not standing behind that table waiting on me.
She's going to be smiling in her resort in the library by the fireplace.
We'll FaceTime you. And
Yeah, that's right.
and saying, do your best.
that's right. Pay attention, right?
Right.
Well, ladies, thank y'all. I think that we were able to cover more ground and maybe add a little bit more context and details to things. And I can't think of, Shirley, you got something?
Thank you very much for doing this before I've completely lost my mind with everything. The memory's going fast.
With the packing and the transitioning and all that involves.
Maybe this summer when you're on the beach and you've had time to reflect, I might come back and interview you again and maybe get those nuggets of wisdom maybe that will have formed by then.
We'll see how much wisdom gets formed.
Thank you.
Excuse.
Thank you, Hope.
Thank you very much.
This has been so fun, and just to be able to, like, just sitting here just a few minutes ago, you all learned something new about each other.
We had a revelation, didn't we?
And I think that speaks to the beauty of just sitting down and talking with each other and in a small group setting, which is the absolute heart of what dyslexia therapy is looking at the individual, figuring out what they need to succeed. And we just hope that these conversations have just maybe shed light on the mission and the work that we do here at MC. I think that's it for us, right, ladies?
Thank you, Hope.
Help us now, blessed Savior, as we go not let us fail or stumble as we go along God's way. Lead us on, Lord Jesus, for that happy home. I just sing